Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing something a little new. I'm going to get a few of my friends to come in and we're going to do a new segment I'm calling Drink and Discuss, where we're going to just have some drinks. Some will be alcoholic, mine tonight will just be tea. Um, and we're going to discuss a book. So tonight we're going to be doing Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. Uh, it should be noted that there will definitely be spoilers in this, so if you have not finished the book, please don't watch any more of this video because we're definitely going to have spoilers. So uh, come join me and my friends as we sit around and we drink and discuss. All right. Hi, everyone. Here with some of my friends with Max,
Hey.
Logan,
Hey.
and my fiance Elizabeth.
Hey,
And we are going to discuss some Rhythm of War today. All right, guys. You know what? Let's just start off with general thoughts about the books. Max, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Um, there's a lot I like about these books. I do like a lot of the themes of, even if you are incredibly powerful in even if you have incredible powers, there's still the internal demons that you have to face, and that doesn't make you any more impervious than anyone else. I think that's missing from a lot of superhero movies, and you can see it a lot in comic books, but it doesn't really get the same, I guess, airtime
Hmm.
that something like the Stormlight Archives has. Uh, it is a book that I read right after I was dealing with some depressive stuff. Right after college, I was having a hard time finding a job. Uh, I wasn't enjoying where I was in life, and these books helped me some through that. It's they hold a special place in my heart. It's definitely a series I'd recommend. You have to be in the right headspace to read them, but they're absolutely incredible, and they have a really uplifting story on review.
I agree. That's awesome, Max. Thank you. Logan, you want to talk about your general thoughts?
Just in regards to this specific book, or
You can talk about this specific book or the whole Stormlight series too.
well, as you're aware, Brandon Sanderson is my favorite author,
I'm
for
well
good
aware. I'm
reason.
well aware.
As far as Rhythm of War, I was thinking about this beforehand, and I had a great time with the book. I thought pacing at some points was a little funky, but for the most part was pretty solid. I enjoyed the ride through the book. The Sander Lanch, as the community calls it at the end of the book, it was weird. I'm curious what you guys feel, because I didn't like I still it still hit me, but I didn't feel as much of like a wow factor with the Sanderlanche in this particular book. Like, it didn't seem to affect me as deeply as some of the others. So I'm curious where you guys are at with that. But yeah, I really enjoyed the book. The Stormlight Archives in general is quickly shaping up to be arguably my favorite fantasy series. So we'll see how things keep playing out, and I'm curious to see where it goes with the fifth book to end the first overall like arc of the
Yeah.
story, because there's a lot of loose ends to tie up still. So I'm
You know,
curious to see where he goes with this.
just a few loose ends to tie up. Not many people. Well, no one knows this is your first video with me. No one knows this about me, but Logan, me and you both have Knights Radiant tattoos on our arms
Oh
for
yeah.
different orders. So you can tell we enjoy this series quite a bit. Elizabeth, your thoughts?
sure. Yeah, I really liked Rhythm of War. I thought there were a lot of good moments. I kind of agree with Logan that some parts were a little slow in these chapters. Um,
We'll
but
get to that.
overall, no shade though. But overall, I really liked it. Gavin introduced me to these books when we started dating, and I instantly fell in love with them. I really enjoy the world and the characters. I think Brandon makes some really good, relatable characters, even though it is in a fantasy world. And I like the magic system. Well, is it a magic system technically?
Yeah,
Or
it's still a magic system.
still a magic system? Okay. I guess I never really thought about it like that before. But yeah, so like I said, really interesting moments, but there were some parts that kind of dragged here and there. And I kind of, Logan brought up a good point with like the whole wow. I felt that in like the first and second book, I think. And when I finished this, it was more of like an aw rather than like a wow. That was really cool.
I was gonna say I actually had that wow moment in, I think book 3 was the one, Oathbringer, where it's the Wit does the magic, the colors magic from Warbreaker. That's the moment I was like, what? But no, I want to talk on a few points. One, I can agree with Logan that I think like part of the reason is like, like Sanderson, we know he does these things, right? We know that he's gonna do these like nutso like twists and stuff like that we're like, wow, we didn't see coming. So we inevitably predict it to be crazy, right? So that might be part of the reason this one didn't hit. Not to mention like you can't hit 100% of the time. So
True.
But going back to Max on your point about the dealing with the characters and the depression in this, and just not in the entire series, but also just in this book, Elizabeth and I were moving back across to the Midwest when this book basically came out, and so I had like a good like 10 hours in my car to listen to the first part of the book, and like some of the Caledon chapters, like I've had to deal with that depression and stuff before, and like that's why I really like relate to Caledon a lot. But I've moved a lot, worked a lot through all of that, so like I'm not quite in that headspace like I used to be. But like even these chapters were just reminding me like, yeah, that's exactly how I used to feel. Like Sanderson just has this like, and I think it's just because he does his research. Besides being an excellent writer, he just has this way to get into like really good portrayals of characters that are very much real. Whereas some writers like with Caledon, and I want to get into this a little bit more later, but like there are consequences to the hero's journey. He doesn't just get to walk scot-free after he overcomes and says, like an oath. So
Well, I think another thing that's important for this series that really makes these characters so relatable, and it is a side effect. As a side effect, it causes a lot of slow points in these books because you see a lot of these characters when they're not out saving the world, when they're just sitting at home dealing with their issues. And it does create slow points in the books. It can really do that. But if you're one of those people that relates to that moment, it becomes a standout moment in the book.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Okay, let's go. I want to talk, Elizabeth, I want you to start on this. Let's talk about pacing. You already kind of mentioned where it drug for you, but I just want you to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. Gavin would know exactly what chapters I would be on because I go, because, it'd be like a real exciting couple of chapters, and then I get to Venli, and it was normally the ones, not so much where she was like at the tower, running around, but it was in the flashbacks. For me, that really just didn't make me want to read them. I don't know why, but I think it's because I was so invested in everyone else's story, especially Adolin's. I was really invested in his story overall. But I mean, Shalon and Caledon. So I just, you brought up a good point of like, not every book can be 100%. And I wasn't when I read this book, I didn't have that kind of mentality. I was just like, it's going to be good. I can tell, but it's just a continuation of the story. Mm-hmm. It's not a bam, this is the end. This is the finale.
Yeah. I kind of felt like this did a lot of, I don't know how you, Max and Logan, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like this book was mostly a setup for book 5 more than anything.
At
Yeah,
the end of,
absolutely.
I don't know if any of you read the Dresden Files. At the end of this book, I had a very similar feel to the end of the Peace Talk books that came out last summer for the Dresden Files, where so much of the book is focused on setting up the next book that you're not getting that same climactic resolution at the end of it.
Yeah. Because, well, and we'll get to the, I want to save the climaxes for a little bit later. But yeah, I definitely felt like this was more of a setup book for book 5, because book 5, you know, is going to be the conclusion of this first arc of the story. So it's, you know, we're setting up, he's putting all these pieces in place so he can knock them down for us and hit us with those emotional impacts. I also didn't particularly care for the Venli chapters most of the time. There were a few that were okay. Like, I liked the one with her working with like Lift and stuff like that. But like, yeah, I honestly, I don't know. Like, I feel like I feel like she might be more important to the second half of like the series too in the long term, because like, I don't understand the point of the flashbacks, because we already kind of know what happened there, right? Like, the only thing that I can see for the like point of that, adding that length to the book with Venli and Eshonai, is to set up the culture a little bit more thoroughly. But I don't know how you guys felt about that.
I think there's certain points that are good in her backstory. I think a lot of what that backstory did, I mean, Sanderson has said originally he was planning to have, oh crap, why can't I remember her sister's name all of a sudden?
Eshonai.
Yeah, Eshonai. He was originally planning to have Eshonai be the main character from the Singers, but then he decided she was too similar to Dalinar, and he changed tact. I think a lot of this book is, you know, earlier when we saw all the Singer culture, it was all from Eshonai's point of view, and he didn't have that same background for the change. So I think a lot of that came down to his decision to change who was going to be the lead singer.
I could see that for sure. What about you, Logan? Any points in the book that drug for you?
I was very upset that
I know what you're talking about.
the group got to lasting integrity, and then we have a whole part that we don't do anything with that. I was very annoyed by that. Like, I understand why he did it, but I was like, that was probably one of the most exciting parts for me, and I was like waiting to see what happened there. And obviously that pays off down the road, but you have to wait for it.
Oh, you have to wait.
As far as Venli, it's kind of interesting to me that you guys didn't like that as much, because I personally loved all the Venli stuff in this book. I was like all about her, and I think part of that is like the path of redemption that we know is coming for, well, I mean, not necessarily, but she seems to be taking that path of redemption. She knows, like, with the calling of the Everstorm and all this, like, everything they've done to bring back Odium's power and all that, like, she knows she messed up, and she feels like she's betrayed her whole people. And you especially see that later on in the book when she's given that shred of hope that, you know, hey, your people are out there. So I found a lot of her stuff to be, I don't know, it to me, it was just really fun and exciting to read her perspective and see her like battling that self-hatred that she was feeling for that her actions and what she did. Go ahead, Max.
I was going to say, I feel I should clarify, with Venli's chapters, I definitely didn't hate them. In fact, when it was any of the ones where it wasn't the backstory for Venli, I was very much a fan of Venli's chapters. I agree with you. I think it was a very good addition. The backstory stuff, I feel like there were very good moments and there were very slow moments, and I think it could have been cut down, is basically my stance on her backstory bit. Nothing I really hated, but some stuff that kind of dragged.
Yeah, I think that's fair too, because I guess when I was reading, like, you know, there's so many flashback chapters. It definitely, like, I enjoyed it, and I had a good time with those chapters, but I could definitely see a lot of it where it was kind of like like it almost felt like filler in a way, you know. It was like, why is this here, you know? I was like, why are we having a flashback chapter when we could get back to lasting integrity and see this trial?
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, I was trying to think, as far as like other parts of the book. um I I kind of disagree with Gavin as far, well, not necessarily disagree, but when it comes to like the Caledon stuff, I don't relate to him as much as I think like you do, for example. And it's kind of funny because like I can like logically know, you know, what he's going through. I can empathize with that, and I can see what Brandon Sanderson is trying to like represent in that character, but it's not something that I can relate to. So there are definitely points when he's getting like at his lowest where like I almost kind of want the chapter to hurry up. Like I want to find the rise rather than continue to watch the fall, you
Yeah.
know? Just because it's not as relatable to me, so I don't want to sit in it as long. And there is obviously a lot of that in this book.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot of that in this book.
I think the thing I both appreciate and kind of get bored with some of Caledon's arcs, because I really liked his first arc in the first book. I think that was a really good one. And all the other ones, I think it's very good that he comes back and it's like, oh, he said the words, but the depression isn't just cured; it's not gone; it's still there. But I do think there are times in some of the books where it gets hammered on a little bit too much, and I think time could be better spent looking from another character's perspective in.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, there's definitely some points in this book that were like, you know, Callan's perspective is like very, very dark in this book, I feel like. And it's one of those things where it's like, I'm tired of seeing my boy hurt over and over and over again. Come on, can't he have a victory? But there are payoffs for that, right? So
yeah.
And we'll get to those payoffs.
It does kind of get back to my earlier point when we first started up, where you have to be in the right headspace for these books. And Caledon there are chapters from Caledon's perspective where I've had to just say, I'm going to set this book aside, I'm going to read something else for a few days, and then I'm going to come back to it. I can't keep this up because it's just too dark. It has definite payoffs down the road, but it definitely does make the book seem longer when you have to take those breaks for your own mental health.
I think that is like one thing that Brandon Sanderson does so well, and that can definitely be like hit or miss depending on the person. And part of the thing that I love so much about this series is just like the mental health aspects that he shows in the books, and like deep dives into them. It's not like stuff doesn't get glossed over. This isn't like just a fun action series where it's just action piece, you know, like it's constantly hammering you with stuff and it's all fun and the good guy's always winning and, you know, like all that like kind of stereotypical stuff. He does a great job of balancing that with all the negative things, and really making the characters real, I guess I would say. Which I really appreciate.
Yeah, they're not only high as perfect individuals.
Yeah. So, since we're already talking about Caledon, let's just keep on this topic.
There was a couple other pacing points I wanted to make.
Go ahead.
Just a couple sections. Well, one as more of like a general overall. I'm curious. We'll get to. I guess it's more related to character stuff. I loved all the Navani stuff, and I know he's kind of written the books. Like each book is kind of the perspective of a specific character for the most part. And I definitely took this at his book.
Yeah.
And I loved most of her stuff. There were a couple points later on, like with Raboniel, where, like, especially when they got into like the musical stuff, that felt a little. It just felt like it got a little too complex and like just a little heavy-handed to me. Like he was just throwing a lot of like kind of. I don't want to necessarily say difficult, but like
technical.
Yeah, it was very technical. Yeah, that's right. That's a good word for it. And it was just like it was a lot all at once. I wasn't crazy about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing to mention for that is it does get really technical, and it's weird to see something get like that in a series where he has to pretend not to have the scientific knowledge that we have for it, and it does create weird pacing points. That said, there is something to be said for all of it coming at once, because a lot of the times if you're doing something like this, everything comes together all of a sudden. It's not like you find out a little bit at a time.
Mm-hmm.
With a lot of these major discoveries, it's like, well, we did all this base work, and now it's all just coming together, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, I think Elizabeth, you've talked to me too about having problems with that section specifically.
I mean, as a musician, I thought it was really cool, like with the tones and everything, and creating like their own rhythm. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, he combined real life science with fantasy elements, and my brain, and maybe I'm the only one, but my brain could literally not wrap around any of it. And so it made it a little difficult to understand, but I wasn't mad about it because it's fantasy. You know, none of the stuff really exists. But I mean, I still thought it was cool, you know, how they created the rhythm, and I will say this, Brandon knows his music vocabulary.
I was gonna say,
A+.
he knows, he does his research, that's for sure.
Yeah.
In regards to the musical stuff too, like just because like Max said, it kind of like it's like an avalanche all at once in a way. It was like I could follow it, like in hindsight I can follow it when it's all said and done, but I would say there were definitely more points within that set of chapters, you know, where Raboniel and Navani are really making these big important discoveries. There were more points there where I was rereading like a paragraph or like rereading things multiple times just to like really like make it click in my head, you know?
Yeah, and I think that might be something, because I agree with Max, like on a technical standpoint, right? Scientific discoveries like this all kind of like merge together at the same time. They kind of just, the pieces fall in place, but you have all these separate pieces. But I think he maybe could have tuned down the technical just like a little bit, and maybe like spaced out like it between a couple chapters to the point where it's not like, wait, what? Because even I was like, what? Hold on, I gotta reread this entire section. I had to go back and re-listen to the section because I was like, it's super cool and very interesting, but it's such hard magic basically that it's almost off the chart of how like it's like he's like setting it up very specifically, you know.
Yeah, I think I might have an easier time with that particular bit, just because a lot of the series that I really like, it's all, well, we use science for everything, and then there's just this little tweak that makes it magic, you know? Like, they just add an input, and that's what makes the magic. And so I did appreciate that to a degree with this, because, like, if you get down to it, the only thing that really, like, the only magic that's added is that these tones have a specific effect on the world, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I do really like that personally, but I can't understand where it would make some people unhappy.
And I wouldn't say it made me unhappy. It was just one of those things that was like, it was almost just a little complex. I think it's interesting and cool, but it's just like a little too complex. Okay, let's just start off. We've talked a lot about Caledon already, so let's talk about Caledon. We already talked a lot about his depression through this book. It kind of drug on us a little bit. How did you guys feel about him basically discovering psychology?
I loved that. I loved it so much. I will say that particular section, just because like, you know, I've had some like college classes related to that. Like I'm really interested in psychology and sociology, like in particular.
I think it makes sense that he was the one that did it, and I
Mhm.
like the callback to it being a medical, well, a care field, but it kind of goes back to the very first book where you get the Caledon flashbacks, and his dad always talking about how little Caledon likes blood and doesn't like the kind of ick factor of
Mhm.
medicine, and this kind of gives him that I can care for people without that ick factor.
Mhm.
So I think that was a good tie.
Mhm.
Elizabeth, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, when I reached that part in the book, I think I was going back to therapy too. So I was like, oh, great. He discovered group
We
therapy
can all go to therapy together.
rather than just sticking people in dark rooms and calling it a day. Yeah, it was cool. And I think, what's, I know Caledon is an angsty boy and I like that about him. But I think rather than him just being like just a warrior, he does have that other side to him. Like the really he really cares about people and he wants to make people better. Without giving them surgery, or bandaging them up.
He wants to
And
do whatever he can for people.
exactly. Yeah, and so it was really interesting to see him kind of take on this new role, like
Mhm.
off the battlefield. I kind of liked his retirement. I thought that was an interesting chapter in his life, so to speak.
It was something I didn't expect this early.
Yeah, I expected it maybe into the next section, like the next 5 books. But one thing I gotta say about this section that I really liked, I mean, I love the whole psychology discoveries thing, but I just absolutely love how Teft is like, nope, sir, I'm serving with you regardless of where you go. You're retired, I'm retired. What are we doing?
Loyal
Um,
to the end.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
I,
let's talk on that.
the big thing I gotta say is, am I allowed to curse on this?
Yes, you can curse.
Okay. If you weren't a part of the subreddit Fuck Moash before this book, you should be afterwards.
Oh my gosh, I'm
Oh,
spiritually a part of that Reddit. I was so mad, and Gavin can back me up on that. I was like, fuck Mo. Like, I was so mad. I was like, how can he do this? But anyway.
There's a Vine that I shared, I believe, with Elizabeth and Logan of like it's like Moash and it's like a rag doll being like kicked down a stairwell. But I mean, I agree. Fuck Moash. But God, I was so heartbroken when Tef died. Not because like I thought like as a writer it was really good because it was well set up, and Tef's journey is kind of done, right? Like his whole purpose now is to help Caledon, and
This got him over that last roadblock.
yeah, that well, I mean, like, but like that, oh God, that ending line with him saying like, "At least I die knowing I'm loved," to Moash is so fucking like, it's amazing, and I just was like, stop.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's all Teft wanted.
Yeah.
He got his entire arc, and I'm so sad to see him go, but I definitely understand why he left, and I think it was a really good stroke, like you said. I think it was masterfully done.
So, continuing on Caledon's arc, uh, the pursuer and his end, that was very satisfying, especially
I loved
when
how
like
brutal it was.
especially when Moash is literally like, okay, listen, all you have to do is just not touch Caledon. He's broken. He'll kill himself. That's all you gotta do. Just don't touch him. And then he walks away, and it's like, we all knew. And the pursuer's like, I'm gonna touch him. And just gets completely wiped. Oh, it was so satisfying to watch him just get like crushed into that window.
Well,
I loved how like just like the brutality of it was great, but also like Caledon just made him his bitch in that situation. Like it was hilarious to see the pursuer is the absolute like epitome of like arrogance and like self-confidence, and to see Caledon just like so effortlessly belittle him and just destroy him emotionally in front of all of his peers.
Yep.
It was just like, it was perfect.
Well, I liked the physical fight. I think that was great. But what I liked even more than that was the kind of like in story metaphysical kind of fight going on, because I mean both of these people have become legends to their individual groups. They are for in a certain sense of the word, one of them literally and the other one from a like hero standpoint, they are immortal. And how do you kill an immortal? You destroy their reputation.
Yeah. Oh, and he definitely
and that was the fight on both sides.
Oh man, that was good. Okay, last thing for Caledon, and then we'll move on. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, guys. The fourth ideal for Caledon. I gotta say that, like, well, I know for Elizabeth, because I was here when she read it, and I was so excited because I had finished it like weeks before she got there, and I couldn't talk about it at all. I was like in tears when the TN scene happens, and it was just like that, like, to me it was that like that piece of the puzzle that I really wanted for Caledon to have, right? Like I wanted him to have this final, like, this character growth, because like he basically was on the cusp of saying the fourth ideal at the end of the last book, and he just like couldn't quite get there. So like I've been waiting 2 years to find out what it is, and like finding out what the ideal is and like having him get there with the help of both Dalinar and Tien was fantastic. And also just like the Dalinar moment of, I will give him more time. God, I love that moment.
I love Dalinar. Hands down favorite character on my end.
We love Daddy Dalinar.
Daddy Dalinar.
We stand.
That said, I am scared what Sanderson is going to make him go through for the fifth ideal.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this right now. My personal theory, the fifth ideal for the Windrunners is going to be something along the lines of having to sacrifice one to save many.
Yeah,
that's just going to destroy him.
I have a feeling it'll be something along those lines too. It's really interesting because like we've basically gotten this setup, right, of like, one, that we know the Knights Radiance left for a reason, and we started to get that set up in this book too, of which is probably going to be mostly the second 5 books, I'm imagining. Not as, I don't think it's going to be in the 5th book that much, other than like more setup for it, but of something worse is out there, and they stopped themselves so that they wouldn't confront it now. So when I'm interested to see what happens when they hit these 5th ideals and when they discover it, and what's hiding in the closet that's going to be worse than what's going on right now. I guess I want to do a predictions for Caledon quick. Do you think he makes it to the second half of the series?
He's better.
I think it will be okay, so I think I remember once Sanderson saying something about how all the main characters in the first half are going to be in the second half, but are like less. This is as a generalization. From what I remember for it, I think he said something about how all the characters in the first half are in the second half, but they take more of a supporting role.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, personal bet, Caledon's going to do something stupid and brave, and he's going to get the 5th ideal. He'll be the head of the Windrunners, but something will happen where he physically can't.
Okay, I can see
there,
that.
even more than the PTSD.
I could see that. I just have like this sinking suspicion that either Caledon or Dalinar is not going to make it out of this first 5 books.
There have been a couple points already where I kind of expected Dalinar to die. And I feel like he in particular, if I had to guess any main character was going to die, he would be at the top of my list, as much as I hate to say it.
I think it's going to go... Okay. I think Dalinar is going to lose the duel.
Yeah.
I think he's going to lose the duel, and he's either going to, we're going to lose him in the second half because he's either serving, well, now Taravangian, but he's either serving him or, you know, when he finds out that the deal is kind of bunk because he didn't make the deal with the same person, he offs himself just to save the people.
Mm-hmm.
He makes a heroic sacrifice, and that's what I hate to say it, but I don't think Dalinar is making it to the second half.
Yeah.
I especially after seeing Navani take up a bondsmith role too, that was definitely more of a thing that was like, this is not giving me good feelings for Dalinar in the long run.
Yeah.
How broken do you think Navani gets after that?
Yeah.
Well,
she's already been through so much. Just let her be happy for like 2 seconds.
She'll be happy for like what, 16 days before the duel.
Yeah, right.
Now that since we're on the topic of Navani, we've already talked about her research a lot. Her becoming a bondsmith. I love the moment where she's basically like, "Fuck you, Moash," and becomes a bondsmith. Thoughts, opinions? Elizabeth, you want to start us on this one?
Yeah, sure. She's my queen. Like I'm so protective over her just because I feel like even in this book, and I know one of us brought up like this was kind of like Navani's book, Navani's time to shine, and I could tell that was going to be the case just from like the prologue of like what's his face? I can't remember his name. Gavilar. Yeah. I just got like really triggered after the prologue because he was like, you're pretty much nothing, you're fake, you know, you're not a scholar. And so like after I read that prologue, I was like, okay, clearly, you know, this is going to be her time to shine. But anyway, I had a feeling either Navani or David, is that how you say it? David was going to bond with the tower. I would have placed bets on that, but I was glad that it was Navani because I don't know, she just deserved more than, you know, than what past chapters in her life gave her, and I don't know. I just think she's really cool and a badass.
I mean, it puts her at the forefront of the Knights Radiant too, which is kind of where she already was, but now she has an actual reason to be there. And I was like, from all the setup as a writer in this book, I was like, Navani's definitely going to bond with the tower. But like, I'm so used to Sanderson taking that expectation, being like, nah, we're going to move it over here. And so I was expecting either David to be the one that ended up bonding in the long run, or I can't think of his name. The Parshendi in Bridge 4.
Erlane.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to be either David or Rlain that ended up bonding the tower in the long run, but I'm glad it was Navani because it was so set up, and I think he purposely put them in there just to kind of like make that moment a little bit better. Because like I think he wanted to do that obviously from the beginning, but he likes to do Brandon Sanderson things, right, and like mess with our minds a little bit.
I think something that I like about her becoming the bondsmith too, and you see it especially with her like talking with the sibling throughout the book, like they are like such like opposing forces, and I'm really curious to see where that goes, and I really like the idea of that happening. Because I think that represents the bondsmith so well. You know, they're meant to bring everybody together. So what epitomizes that better than the sibling who has been like talking so much hate on Navani for, you know, using the Spren and all the Fabrials and things like that. And now Navani basically like kind of outlogics her like, hey, you don't have a choice. This is what we need to do. And the sibling's like, but I don't like you. I don't like what you're doing. And Navani's like, we'll figure it out. You know, I'm really excited to see how those two develop together.
I liked that she was chosen. Like you said, I think it was masterfully done. I think it's a great addition because it's very much that forced to learn to trust each other situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that said, there was one thing that the sibling did that I really didn't like, and that was her kind of leading David on that she was going to fix him. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I was not happy with that. I Personal theory, he's going to end up bonding to a spren that was changed by Sha Not,
Yeah.
and it's going to be one of those I'm different but not broken or bad situations.
I think the sibling is a they, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, right, it
Yeah.
is.
It's
They
okay.
are.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
correct you on that, Max. It's not a big. We want to make sure that we're using the proper pronouns.
Yes, that is
Um,
entirely fair. I think of they are very similar to Navani.
Yeah, you
in
thought
that entire thing.
was
So
gonna
I've
say
just
yeah.
immediately combined her with
Yeah,
Navani
yeah.
or them with Navani. So
So since we're on the topic of Dabbit too, I'm gonna jump down to how did you guys like the Dabbit chapter? Because I have some thoughts on it.
I like that it made Dabbit an actual character. I'm pro that chapter.
I think like I mean you look at the Stormlight Archives, there's so much of it that feels like there's so many underdog stories in it, and it's about like representing even like the littlest among us and how you can overcome that and you can achieve greatness regardless of where you've come from. And Dabbit is such like like he feels before that he feels like kind of like a one-off character. Like you're like he's
Yeah.
just kind of always there in the background, but you're like you don't really think about him. He's kind of whatever.
Yep.
But Brandon Sanderson is so good at giving these characters life and giving them context and giving them history. And it makes you care about Dabbit even more. Personally, if I had to make a prediction, I kind of feel like I feel like he will bond eventually, but I feel like he's not going to progress very far. I don't know if he'll get killed, but I feel like he's not going to get like a whole lot of progression, if that makes sense.
I kind of expect it to be something like all the other members of Bridgeport. It's like, oh, he finally got a bond, and okay, we're going to go let him do his own thing,
Mhm.
and he's just kind of in the periphery.
Yeah.
That said, I love that Sanderson kind of just called out all the readers with the whole thing where he's like, nobody really pays attention to me. I'm just in the background.
Yep. Yeah. You have anything to add, Elizabeth?
I thought it was a good chapter, and I'm definitely gonna keep my eyes out for Davin in the future. when when Gavin finished, he was like, "Just you wait till Davin's chapter." He was like, "It made
Actually,
me
I
cry."
specifically said chapter 85. You just wait till chapter
Okay.
85.
Well, whatever. And so I got to it and I read it and I was like, he cried over this? It was like 2 seconds. And he
Okay,
made it out to be, like,
listen.
such a big deal.
That's because the Dabbit is one of those background characters, but Sanderson portrayed basically beautifully portrayed a disabled character so well to a point that I think it was one thing that it was like just one beautiful writing. And two, it was also like there was so much emotion in that chapter from Dabbit because it was like his tribute to Caledon for Caledon saving his life. And like just going into his head and seeing how he sees Caledon was really impactful to me, and I thought that was really cool.
That is one thing that Sanderson doesn't do a lot of that I wish he did. And that is some of my favorite points in any book series is taking what's outside and looking at the main cast. Like this book, one of my absolute favorite chapters was the bit where the son is watching and he's like, oh, this is how I feel about Caledon, blah, 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 blah. And then his dad goes out to fight for Caledon. I loved that chapter. And I just wish he'd do more of that outside looking in bits.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
go
ahead.
Oh, on Dabbit real quick. I think part of what I liked about it so much too was um, it just kind of like subverts the expectations, and it also gives some representation and really shows like the idea of like you never know what somebody's story is,
Mm-hmm.
and so you should like we like I would say I'm sure a lot of people reading this book, I'm just going out on a limb here making an assumption that a lot of people probably kind of write Dabbit off as like yeah, he's like a minor, very minor support character,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like always there but like not really significant in any way. And he plays a pretty substantial role in at least Caledon's arc of this story,
Yeah.
and it gives some representation and really shows that like you should be mindful of people's stories. Like you never know what's going on in the background.
I
Well,
think.
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think one other important thing for this that you mentioned there is, well, you kind of touched on there, is if you think about it, for a lot of the other stories, whenever Caledon or whenever Caledon thought about David, it was this is my failure. I can't help him.
Mm-hmm.
David doesn't need help. It's who he is. And
Yeah.
it's nice that he finally learned, I didn't fail David
Yeah.
type thing.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, it's just really good to see because like it is with a lot of books, right? It's hard to like portray perspectives that are not your own really really well and so thoroughly that it isn't like an insult, because there's a lot of writers who do that and it's shameful. So
Real quick, I just wanted to say too, just to piggyback on Max's comment, I think that like with the way Dabbit works out in this book, I think that was really important for Caledon's progression too,
Yeah.
because even though it's not specifically referenced within the book, I would think just as a human being, that is Caledon being able to see like I was projecting onto this. Like what I was thinking, none of it was real.
Yeah.
Like it was my own mind betraying me in this situation. I think that helps him reach where he gets to by the end of the book.
Definitely never done that before. Okay, we've talked a lot about that part of the story. Let's talk about Shalon quick, because we have barely touched on Shalon in this chapter. And her
I got a lot to say about Shalon.
Okay. I like how she starts to kind of unravel here and like really like kind of become these three parts. And like at the beginning, it's interesting that she's set up into this way of like there's a balance, but we all know that balance is on shaky ground, and it's just like thrown into chaos as they start going with Maraise and everything that's going on. How did you guys like her journey in general? Logan, you want to start us since you have a lot to say about her?
I'll preface this by saying that I would say probably throughout the first book and second book, I really wasn't crazy about Shalon as a character. Like the disassociative identity stuff, I really wasn't digging. It really wasn't clicking with me. Like as I thought about it more and as I saw her character growth, she has become one of probably my favorite characters within the series, I would say personally. And I remember thinking, like, and granted, to be fair, in the first book, a lot of her stuff is really slow. There's particularly a lot of setup with Shalon.
Yeah.
And I feel like she arguably has done the most, or at least she is one of the most developed characters within this book, in my opinion. And you see that a lot, particularly with her previously bonded Spren. She's finally telling these truths that are so important to her, Wing of the Knights Radiant. And I really liked, well, at least for me, Brandon subverted expectations, because I was seeing this whole idea of formless that was developing over the course of the book. I was worried that was going to become a consistent thing, because I was like, man, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I don't know if I'm going to like this or enjoy reading about this. And I really like that that actually that just kind of turned out to be her fear for really getting the truth out there and coming clean with what happened, and it was resolved, and it was disappointing to see Vale die, quote unquote, sort of. But man, I just loved the character growth for Shallan and what that represented. And like, she is such a deep character, and man, I'm so excited to read more about her.
Elizabeth, thoughts?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of agree with Logan. When I first started reading the series, I thought Shallan was just very like vanilla. Just, oh, I'm here, I'm super smart, blah blah blah. But then as I kept reading, I was like, okay, she's getting like more and more interesting. But it was really this book that really sucked me in and made me interested in her, because, well, for a couple reasons. I really liked Radiant, Vale, Shallan, and then the addition of Formless. When I heard about that, I was like, oh no, what's going on here? But I also really like, I guess this applies, but I also really like how Radiant, Vale, and Shallan all interact with each other and other people, and how other people can kind of pick up on the fact of which
Who they're interacting with.
Yeah, and I actually think it's really sweet because she's married to Adolin at this point, and he's like, "Am I talking to Vale?" Or like, "Can Shallan come out?" Like, he's just such a gentleman, and I'm like, wow.
He just he like literally
So sweet.
he accepts her for who she is and rolls with it.
Yeah, and this is sort of off topic, I guess, but one thing that I really appreciate about Brandon Sanderson in his books is his willingness to include all this diversity into his books, about mental health, gender, DID. I recently learned about DID, and so when he included in this book, I was like, oh, that's great. He's bringing it to everyone's attention, and he was representing a lot of people in this book too, like with David, he's mute up until a point. So it's just really refreshing, because I feel like with a lot of other books, they're like, we have this hero and, he or she is perfect, and so I just always think it's interesting for main characters, especially powerful ones, to have flaws. And so I think, obviously the DID comes from trauma, but I think including all these characters into one character just really added more depth to her, and just intrigued me all the time. Like, I was always so excited to read about Shallan or Vale or Radiant, and I was kind of sad about Vale dying, but I think it happened in a really cool way, because Vale was pretty much like, you're good to go now, man. I was just here to protect you, but
I was literally here to be your Veil until you were ready.
Yeah.
Moment when that happened, I was like, damn you, Brandon Sanderson. Damn you for being so fucking clever.
But she had a really interesting journey just in like one book alone. And it was great to be a part of that.
I was going to say, I remember you coming to me and being like, Pattern can't have betrayed her, right?
I was so upset. Okay, Pattern, I will die for Pattern. Okay. And when Shallan was like, it was Pattern, and I'm like, it probably wasn't. He doesn't even like know how to be bad, So yeah, but that was just, everyone being paranoid.
Yeah. Max, do you have anything to add to Shallan?
I have a love-hate relationship with Shallan. I love some of the stuff she does so much, and half the other stuff I'm just sitting there pounding my head on a wall saying, talk to somebody! Talk to Adolin, he loves you! Talk to somebody!
Yeah.
It will fix this! And I think she did have a really great arc here. I'm really sad Vale's gone. I really hope to see more of Vale and also to a certain degree Radiant's personality seeping through in the complete version of herself. I think it was well done. Her interaction with when Vale or not Vale when Formless takes over, that was a really good bit there, and I thought it did not end how I expected it to end. That entire mini arc there where Formless took over did not end how I expected.
Yeah, it totally went sideways for me too. I was like literally the entire time I was like, I have no idea what's gonna happen here, because like every little thing was like, it's another piece of the puzzle. I was like, I don't trust you, Brandon Sanderson. I don't trust you to give me the actual information I need.
I was expecting somebody to die and that to break her out of it.
I think
go ahead.
Something that's like made Shallan such like a favorite for me in this book is like I would say I feel in one way she's one of the more generally relatable characters in the book, in that she is trying to find, like, she is trying to figure out how to fit in every various group she's a part of. She is like trying to find out how to fit in. So many of the other characters are very like, this is who I am, like I know who I am, this is what I'm doing, like they're more rigid, I suppose I would say. Whereas I feel like I can relate to Shallan a lot more in the sense of like her personality changes depending on who she's talking with, or in this case with her DID, that's a big part of it. But even just like without that, she seems like so much more of like a fluid character, and that she's struggling and trying to figure out how she relates to the world and how she relates to the various in groups that she has in her life.
Yeah, I really like how especially in this book you find out, this book and the second book, like her biggest thing, like how she broke, is she hates herself. And so much of this is her trying to be other people because she hates herself so much, and that's what her power is she can be anybody, and having to realize that just because she can be anybody doesn't mean she shouldn't be herself.
Yeah. All right, let's get to Adolin now. His trial, his relationship with Maya, and do you think in the long term Maya will be restored and Adolin will become a Radiant? And Max, let's start with you.
Yes, I think it will definitely happen. I think a lot of him... Okay, so there's a couple reasons. I think Adolin will definitely restore Maya in the end. Maybe not to like exactly as she was. It might end up more of a situation where it's like Ja Nat's Spren, where she's different than how she was, but she is a complete Spren. There's a couple reasons I feel this way. The first one is I do think it is very much an important part of reforming relationships between Spren and humans, and also to a certain degree Spren and Singers, where it's anything can be healed, anything can be fixed. I also think that personally, I think Adolin is the real champion of their entire group. He's the one that will be sitting at the front being the like, I'm the pretty champion who takes on people one-on-one. I think it's a very sweet relationship between him and Maya. I really, really would like to see how his and Maya's relationship will affect Shallan and her first Spren's relationship.
Logan, Elizabeth, anything to add?
I mean, what can I say, but honor is not dead so long as he lives in the hearts of men, I love Adolin for being like the cheery, not necessarily comic relief, but he's just like always such this positive driving force in the story. Even with all of like his own personal demons he's battling, he is like the epitome of like optimism and like just constantly trying to fight and strive for good and happiness. I love his relationship with Caledon and like how opposed they are in some ways, you know. Like I think of the chapter when they go to the bar, like Caledon's like leave me alone and Adolin's like nah, not a chance.
Oh,
Um I I'm glad I wasn't sure how the trial was gonna play out. I kind of figured, just knowing Brandon Sanderson, that it wasn't gonna be, so one dimensional as like either it goes, for in favor of Adolin or it doesn't go in favor. Like I figured there's gonna be some nuance there, and you see that with Captain Nodum, and you see that with Maya, and I really expected when Maya, like at the trial, when they pulled Maya up, I honestly expected that to be the bonding moment for
Yep.
him.
That's what I was thinking too.
And I was really surprised that it wasn't. So I'm curious to see, like, because that almost is like, it seems like such a peak moment for them.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see, like, where Brandon takes that and, like, what's going to happen. And part of me almost wonders if there's definitely like I've thought about like what might happen, and I could also see a possibility where Adolin doesn't bond with her. She's still there, but like Adolin still maybe ends up being the champion for the good guys in this whole series, and he isn't bonded. He isn't a radiant, and he like represents so perfectly like honor is not dead, it lives within men, and they will continue to fight for good to like their last breath no matter what.
Yeah, I honestly like I'm like every bit is because like it's set up in a way that's like Caledon's the protagonist. Caledon's going to be the champion. He's the one they're all going after. But who is the duelist in this cast of characters? It's Adolin.
I don't think Caledon could ever have been the champion for their group.
No.
He's just too much of a soldier. He thrives in chaos.
Yeah.
And he thrives in being able to do whatever it takes to win, while Adolin is very much I will be the symbol that sits here and does what has to, well, not, no, it has to be done, but portrays the image that everybody expects to see. I think that was actually, going back a few books, his killing of Sadius was a major break in that facade. That was very important, and it will continue to come up in the future.
Yeah.
I'm kind of sad it didn't get more screen time, honestly, with the fact that they touched on it a few times in this book, and it never really got anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason they didn't touch on it was because he wasn't really at, Urithiru. He was kind of off doing his own thing with Shallan.
Yeah, I'm scared that Dalinar's going to die before he can completely come to terms with that between each other.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
I feel like that'll be a big. I definitely feel like that's how it'll play out, and I feel like that will be a big part of Adolin's character moving forward, because I think he will survive and he'll be fine, but then he'll need to figure out like, I never made amends with my dad. How do I live with this?
Yeah.
Honestly, I could see Dalinar's death being the bonding moment, and him coming to terms afterwards with the fact that he never fixed that relationship with his dad, because Maya's the
she's a cultivations friend.
Yeah, she's a cultivations friend, and one of their things is healing.
Yeah, it's to remember the lost.
Yep, remember the lost. And I think that is probably, like, if there's going to be a binding moment, I think it's going to be post Dalinar death.
Yeah, I could see that. I think Adolin will. I don't know. I feel like Adolin could play a major role in, like, a major secondary role in the next set of books too, as either like leader of the Knights Radiant or something. Not like leader, but you know what I mean, like king amongst his people.
Yeah. I was gonna say something about Adolin. Crap. It's completely. I was saying it and then it popped right out of my head. I hate when that happens.
On to the next topic.
I do want to touch real quick. Small thing that I kind of looked this up after the fact just to like remind myself. But Adolin and Caledon being foils of each other, I think it's especially cool too. How you see the honor is not dead line with Nodum and like kind of representing what Adolin is as a character, and you look back on like in Words of Radiance, Caledon has that moment where he says, "Honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do." and like you just see the reversal of it, you know. Like I just think that's a nice little touch that Brandon threw in there.
I remember what it was.
Go for it.
The recurring theme in this book is we talked about it a couple times, projecting expectations onto others.
Yeah.
And I think the trial was a big part of that because everybody was projecting what they thought onto the Deadeye Spren. And then Maya stands up and is like, you can't take our sacrifice. This was our decision.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Oh, man, that part was really good. Elizabeth, any final thoughts on Adolin?
I mean, I love Adolin. You know, kind of like what I touched on with Shalon. This is gonna sound mean, but I kind of hope he doesn't become a Radiant, because I feel like that would be a cliche, you know. And I don't know how to say this eloquently, but to me, he's kind of like, he already has the ideals of a Radiant. He just doesn't have the powers, you know. And I mean, and he's a great duelist, you know, and you know, but you know, he had no problem, you know, rushing in to save, what's his name, Nodum?
Yeah.
Captain Nodum, you know, even though, like, you know, Nodum basically gave him like the middle finger. He was like, I'm still gonna save him, hello, you know. So he just immediately like booked it, and he had no problem. And you know, when the Spren at the trial were basically like, I don't even know, like abusing Maya, you know, he was like, stop it, like, just, you know, he immediately protected her.
So
and
pissed.
Oh, I was so mad. Poor Maya. But and another reason why I don't want him to bond with Maya is because they already have a bond. They don't really need to bond, and it's a different kind that shows a different kind of relationship that Spren and humans can have. You know, and one thing that I think is really interesting is that at one part, I think when they're traveling on the boat in the river, the Bead River or whatever, Adolin is practicing like sword movements, and Maya immediately picks up on it. And it's like, even though she's physically not his sword, like she knows his movements already, you know, instinctually. And so I really hope going forward that Brandon explores that some more. Because I don't know. I mean, yes, the trial was I think a huge example of how close they are, but I would want him to explore that more in the future. Like, do they become like soldier buddies, you know, on the battlefield, you know? I think it'd be cool.
Well, I mean, and part of the reason that Brandon made Adolin not a Radiant was because he was basically the powerhouse in the beginning of the series. And so he's now in the reverse position where all these people, like, he was the duelist, the guy that was great at sword fighting, and now he's the exact opposite. He's like, it doesn't matter how good he is at sword fighting because everyone around him are basically gods, and he's just the normal guy now. So that reversal I think is really cool. But I don't think there's any stopping it. I think at some point, like, I don't think that their bond will be the same as everyone else's, but I think Adolin will heal Maya in the long term, and they will have some sort of bond. But I think I kind of agree with Max that I don't think it'll be a traditional Knights Radiant bond. All right, let's go on to Siri Vangian.
I was gonna do one quick question.
Okay.
And this is just a quick thing. Was anybody else in the second book where there was the whole love triangle thing going on, being like, oh, come on, Caledon, Adolin, you two get together. You two are the two that should go together.
I mean, you know, I'm sure that it's shipped all over the internet.
Yeah, I was going to say, just look up fan fiction, Max. It'll be there.
All right, Taravangian. His journey to become Odium.
I
gotta
like to
say,
call him Toadium.
Toadium.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta say, this kind of came out of left field for me. This was one thing that I was not expecting to happen whatsoever. I was honestly kind of thought that Taravangian's journey was kind of like coming to a close. But like, I love that he took Odium's place, because I think that makes Odium far, far more dangerous than what he already was.
I think to like a couple things. I overall I do like that Taravangian becomes Odium now and takes it over. And I'll touch on that in a second. I will say, quick note, I didn't like how like Reyes, who was Odium's what's the word, vessel before, like he seemed like such a throwaway.
Yeah.
Like that I kind of wish would have gotten a little more. Like I don't know, it just that wasn't very satisfying to me.
Yeah, I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of like, because I think we got so much of him from book 3 with Dalinar that I kind of would have liked them to have one more like confrontation moment, and then for Taravangian to take over. But we'll get to some of that other stuff too. So
I think Odium's more dangerous. I'm going to say this. I don't think Taravangian is the important part of that relationship. I don't think Taravangian is the one in control. I think because we get that letter earlier in the book where they're talking to Hoyd, and the letter writer, who I can't remember who it was, but they're talking about how you've always seen crap, I can't remember the original Odium's name.
Reyes.
Yeah, Reyes. You've always seen Reyes as the dangerous part of that relationship. I think Odium is the dangerous part. I think that while Taravangian is the new Odium, it's the Odium shard that's in control.
yeah, well, I think it's just the biggest reason why he's more dangerous is he's just a better vessel for Odium, as opposed to Reyes, who was kind of fighting against that relationship.
Is he a better vessel, or is he just less aware of the dangers, is the question.
I guess that's true. Well,
I could see. Well, like I mean, look at how Taravangian's character has progressed. He was like looking for power to save his people, and he experienced that peak power and gradually dwindled away, and now he has the power again. I think he's going to get wrapped around that power, and Odium's all about emotion and amplifying that emotion. I think that he's not going to realize like how much that's affecting him, and I feel like we're going to, when things come to a head in the 5th book presumably, I think that like Taravangian is going to have a moment where like his plans are coming to fruition. He thinks he's like in the driver's seat, and things go sideways because of the Odium shard.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Well, do you guys find it interesting that we kind of get the setup of cultivation? This is her plan. Like, it's kind of set up to where she put Taravangian in the path to become Odium intentionally, which means this is someone else's plan at work.
I think unless I'm sure she has more information, and the plan will make more sense. But initial thoughts, she made a bad mistake, and she had no idea what she was messing with.
She played with fire.
Yeah. She was like,
She's
"Oh,
get burned.
it can't be worse." That was her. I think that was her game plan. It can't be worse.
It can't be worse. No, I actually think just the way, because Taravangian's thing is power, right? Like he wants power to save his people, but really he just wants power for himself. That's he's the foil to Dalinar. Like Dalinar has the power and he just wants to help people. Taravangian wants the power, but really he just wants the power. He doesn't really want to help anyone. He wants to help himself. And I think that becomes more and more clear. Like he has this dissonance in his head where he's like, yeah, I'm pretending to want to, like, he thinks he's trying to help people, but really all he's doing is fucking everyone over.
Yeah, he has a hero complex.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think he did though to Wit's memories at the end?
Oh, I do actually have a theory on this.
Okay.
He's not taking the memories was a side effect. I think it's very specifically an effect that he's having on Hoyd, because like who all here has read Warbreaker?
everyone, I think.
Okay, awesome. So we all know like the whole breaths thing and everything. And here we learn that Hoyd keeps his breaths, he keeps his memory in his breaths. And we all know that he had breaths from earlier with the doll thing. We also know that on that planet, in that world, breaths they have to be given, right?
Yeah.
They can't be stolen. They have to be given freely. And then you get over here to Roshar, and it's like, investment can be stolen. I mean, we see Radiants do it all the time. They steal it from gems that are being used for. I'm thinking Angriel for some reason, but
wrong series.
Yeah, wrong series. Anyway, they're stealing the investment from all these machines. They're stealing it with the use of knives that are made out of special metals. I think literally all that's happening is that Odium is literally just basically doing the same thing. He's stealing the investment, and the memories are just they're in the investment, so they get stolen with it.
That's interesting. I'm excited because I really like that. I wish he would actually write another Warbreaker book though.
Isn't one coming up? He's planned for after the 5th of the Stormlight Archives or something.
It's
called Nightblood.
I can't remember what he said. I mean, there is another one in the.
Listen, Brandon Sanderson, I'll buy any of his books whenever they come out. I don't try to pay attention because I know if I pay attention, I'll get too excited and then I'll be like impatient for the next book to come out. So, okay, we got a few
real quick.
Yeah,
I have one other thing with Taravangian. I am hoping. I'm glad that he still stuck around because, quick like. Side note on Raboniel. Raboniel was like one of my favorite parts of this book, and I thought that she was one of the best characters Brandon's ever written.
She was really
and cool. I feel like to a degree she lives on with Taravangian because they both are very much characters that are like, I will do like whatever it takes for my people. Now I think Taravangian is the more evil, so to speak, of the two, and that like you said, Gavin, he wants the power.
He's more volatile.
That's what he cares about more. But I'm curious to see how that develops and if we can see some of those aspects of Raboniel like live on in him.
I do think Raboniel was really cool, and her relationship with Navani this book was awesome. I want to ask this question, but I want to go through, did you guys feel any character just didn't get enough page time in this book? There were a lot of characters that did not get like that much time because it was very focused around who it was, like Navani, Caledon, Shallan, Adolin.
I think a lot of it is the characters that didn't get enough screen time either already had a book devoted to them or are very obviously about to have a book devoted to them. I'm curious if book 5 will be more centered around Yasna or around crap, why can't I remember his name all of a sudden? The assassin in white.
Zeth.
Yeah, Zeth.
Yeah, I mean, I miss Dalinar in this book, but book 3 was Dalinar's book, right? Yeah. So I also was just surprised that Lift wasn't more thoroughly in this book, to be honest, because like I know Brandon has said at some point, I think Logan, I think you brought this up to me, that she is one of his favorite characters, but I think he's also said that like her role is more important later on rather than right now.
Yeah, I've kind of wondered if she's gonna end up playing out. I feel pretty confidently that she's gonna be someone that we see more consistently in the second half of the Stormlight Archives because she also does have that, like, she doesn't age as quickly as everybody else. Yeah. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. I was disappointed by the lack of Lift. I understood it, but I was a little disappointed to not see as much of Bridge 4.
Yeah.
Have you guys read Dawn Shard at all?
No.
No, but I know, doesn't Lift have a pretty important part in Dawn Shard?
Lift is not relevant to Dawn Shard.
Oh no, I'm thinking of the first one. I'm thinking of the
she's
the Edge Dancer. She's all Edge Dancer's all about her.
Yeah.
Dawn Shard, just to like avoid getting into any spoilies, it's very important for Ryson, if you remember Ryson as the character.
I actually have had this one spoiled for me.
I was really surprised, honestly.
Where is he at? Ryson. I don't remember that character.
She's the one in the wheelchair. She has she
Little
jumps
fly
off
thing.
like the island or whatever that the people live on. She's like the merchant trainee.
Yeah, isn't she
She
had
jumps
like
off,
one
and
or
she also gets Cheery Cheery. We have a little
we have an
interlude with
interlude
Cheery
in
Cheery
that.
in this one.
Yeah. I was gonna say
Um,
there's so many setup things like that he does, and I'm just like, there's so much density. Anyway,
She's she's very important for Don Shard. There's also a little more that you see with Lopin and his cousin, Huio, I think is his name. So like Don Shard's great. You guys should read that. But I was really like, I'm curious to see what you guys think after you read Don Shard, because I was astonished that there was nothing about Ryson in this book.
okay, I'll put it in.
I know what you're talking about because I've had it spoiled for me, like I said, and
I
yeah,
haven't had it
that
spoiled,
is
so don't
something
spoil
to
it for
not.
me yet.
That is something that should come up in book 5 if it's not in book 4.
Well, it might have been. He might be intending that to be more of a book 5 thing, because it came out shortly before book 4, and I know like since I listen to audiobooks, it's not on Audible yet. So
Yeah, well, I was just like, I was surprised that there was nothing, like even any interludes. I kind of expected some interludes for her, even, or like the unmade. I feel like are going to become pretty important. Maybe if not necessarily in the 5th book, at least later in the series, somewhere at some point they're going to be pretty important, I think.
yeah.
But it's hard to get too much into that.
It is important to point out that break in pattern of her never showing up in the interludes, because all the other books, she's got an interlude. She's got at least one interlude.
Yeah, so maybe
usually multiple.
Maybe the reason Don Shard was written in the first place is because he had all these extra interludes that he didn't want to include in the book necessarily, but he wanted to have, like, he might have just had too many things he needed to include, and these were just ones he wanted to pull out and move to a different spot. Okay, Rock, he's gone. What do you guys think? I mean, wasn't it said like he's dead? Which is
no, it said he's not coming back.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going with the age-old adage: no body, not dead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think he's dead.
Yeah, I don't think so
either.
I think that his people have to play some kind of important role, if not in book 5, then in the next series, because there is just. And I honestly am starting to think it might not be until the next, because I feel like the next book is just going to be these like days to the duel, and that's it. So I'm wondering if he's going to be like some kind of important character, or like a character that we find out from another character's perspective, like they go to his home, because like we've gotten all these hints throughout all of the books about like how close they are with the Spren and stuff like that, and it's just like, come on, give me more, give me more, give me more.
Well, I think the thing for Rock is, so there's the entire point in the first book. Whoever takes the first set of plate and sword back to the mountain will become king of the mountains. Yeah, and I mean he's got one of the first set of plates, so it might just be a like whole. Well, he's in charge now. We can't let him leave.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's so much stuff that could be happening, but he's just such a good character that there's no way Sanderson would just give him an off-screen death.
There's no way. I'm sure. I wouldn't be surprised if he was like king of his people or something like that. And he comes up in the next series as one of the new characters. The younger characters have to go to there for some reason.
I think it's also going to be important for reconnecting with the singers, because I know like one of the things that's been talked about is I can't remember if it's a word of Sanderson or something, but the Unkalaki are all descendants of the singers, right? Like that's why they have their specific genetic traits, and being a horn eater, they're a mixed blood between humans and singers.
Oh, I actually didn't know that.
Same with the Herdazians. Like, you know how their nails are super hard? They've inherited it from the singers.
Gotcha. I didn't even think about that. Okay. We are approaching 1 hour and 30 minutes. So I think we've hit a lot of these questions, but I want to go to one of Logan's questions, which is, what character do you guys think you relate to the most? Let's start with Elizabeth.
I'm gonna need a hot minute.
Okay, let's start with Logan.
I was thinking about this one, and I think that for me, it's probably got to be Adolin.
Mhm.
I think Adolin is the one for me, just because like I feel like I'm just a very optimistic person. I'm always trying to like bring people together. Like Adolin's all about that. He is like I feel like he's like the constant force of like everybody stick together. We'll get through this.
What do you mean, buddy? You've never once drugged me out of a bar when I've had too much to drink.
So yeah, for me, it seems fairly clear to me that it's Adolin.
I can see that for sure. Max?
At one point I would have said Caledon, but I'm in a lot healthier of a mental place with my depression. And I think at this point, honestly, the person I probably connect to the most, and it's probably why I like him so much, is Dalinar. And a lot of that is just because so much of the problems in his life, he looks back and says, I am my own worst obstacle. I did this to myself. I have destroyed so much stuff that I wanted to do more with, and now I'm trying to fix the pieces. And there are times in my life where I definitely feel like I'm my own worst obstacle, and I look back in my past, I'm like, I was so stupid to do this, and now I've got to fix the pieces.
You ready, Elizabeth? You got your character?
Yes. I wasn't prepared for this question. But I think the reason why it did take me a second is because while reading all these books, at least at one point in time, I found at least one piece of me, in all these characters. Because like with Dalinar, I'll pick, I can't remember the ordeal or ideal, but like I'll rise a better man.
The one of
Every time I fall,
I will rise each time a better man.
Yeah. And I'm not saying this is the character I relate to. It's more of an example, but like I always look at mistakes as opportunities to learn and to grow to be a better person. But I think the person I'm most that I relate to the most is Navani. Just because I brought this up earlier, Gavilar said you'll never be anything, and I've just had people in my past be really difficult with me and what I want to do, and they're like, you're nothing special, you don't have that secret sauce, or whatever. But what I like about Navani is that she just stuck to what she loved doing, and she was resilient and perseverant, and I like to think that I have those qualities. Sometimes I get imposter syndrome, but I see more of myself in Navani than other characters.
I was thinking that you were Navani too, because a lot of there's a thing in her mental space which is like, I'm not a scholar, I'm not good enough, I'm just here because I have money. And
not the money part. I don't really.
No, I know, but you do something similar as an artist.
Stop calling me out.
So I'm just calling you out right now. Well, I wonder who would be my character.
It's definitely not Caledon.
I think it's Lopin.
Oh, dude, Lopin. No, I would definitely say, like, I agree with Max that I'm definitely in a better headspace now, and there are moments that I like. Dalinar is definitely probably my second favorite character, but like Caledon is like, he's my boy. I was in that headspace for so many years of my life that like it's easy to like see that journey and be like, oh, thank God, like this isn't like I'm not the only person type thing. And like, I mean, my tattoo is the Windrunners, and it's because like, when I got it, Logan and I talked about which ones, and I had considered doing the Bondsmiths ones, but the Windrunner ideals fit my personality better. because that's just who I am. I'm just a person that likes to like protect other people. Okay. Do we have anything else we want to talk about? Any other questions people want to bring up that we don't feel like we covered?
I'd say yes, but I thought that was a great endpoint.
I agree with Max. But yeah, there's a couple other important ones that are more like implications for future that I'm like curious about.
Well, maybe too, if this does well, we can get back together and do some discussions of predictions and stuff like that for the future. So, guys,
I would love that, but I'm telling you, it's a terrible decision. I'm a terrible person when it comes to fan theories and personal theories. I'm awful.
All right, guys, if you stuck with us this long, thank you very much for watching. This was a long video. We're almost up to an hour and a half of discussion time right now, so really appreciate it. Would really appreciate it if you guys would like more of these. Go ahead and hit the like button. You can post comments down below if you want to discuss anything that we've talked about. I just ask that you keep them, polite, and we can have a good conversation, even if you don't agree with one of us. It'd be nice to be able to talk and work those through. And if you do like the channel, be sure to subscribe so you can get all my videos. So thanks. We'll see you guys later.